Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, man. The Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is a joke, bro. Like, it is an absolute joke. So, this is the first time since 2013 that no one was voted into the Hall of Fame. They had all of these candidates, right? You had Kirk Schilling, you had Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, Scott Rowland, Omar Vizquel, Billy Wagner, Ty Hilton, Gary Sheffield, Manny Ramirez. You know, you had Sammy Sosa, Andy Pay. I mean, the list goes on of guys, just to name a few. And nobody was voted in. I think Kirk Schilling had the highest percentage of votes. I think it was 71%. And he came out and said, man, look, man, y'all can go ahead and take me off the ballot, yo. I'd rather for my peers to vote for me because I respect that more. And I think a lot of people are getting a sour taste in their mouths from the Hall of Fame because it's so hypocritical, right? You know, so few reasons why I think they're really hypocritical. For one, so they have this moral clause, and they don't want to vote in players that played during the steroid era or were proven to have taken performance-enhancing drugs during the era. I'd like to remind you guys that during that time, there was no rule against steroids or performance-enhancing drugs. Now, I'm not a proponent for performance-enhancing drugs. Never took them. I don't believe in taking them. However, you have to deal with what reality was at that point in time. I didn't see Major League Baseball having an issue with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa when they had their home run tour. You had the commercials, the chicks dig the long ball. You know, they benefited so much from that from a financial standpoint. You know, the viewership was up. You know, people were into it. Then Barry Bonds came along. Barry Bonds broke Hank Aaron's record. But Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer before steroids. You can say the same thing with Kirk Schilling or especially Roger Clemens. I think one of the biggest reasons these guys took steroids was for the longevity or to prolong their prime. You know, with Roger Clemens' case, I think he started to wear down. And so that was the only way for him to get to the point where he can kind of get where he can still deliver at a high level. Now, like I said, I am not a proponent for steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, but again, I got to deal in reality. Even with all that, you still got to perform. You still got to have the muscle memory. You still have to have the hand-eye coordination. Like with Barry Bonds, like I said, he was a Hall of Famer before that. You know, if you go look at his numbers, the guy had a tremendous rate of drawing walks, but yet he still had so many home runs. He didn't strike out much. He had one of the best eyes that we've ever seen. That's hand-eye coordination. That's recognition of the spin of the baseball out of the pitcher's hand, right? That's recognition. That's also film study. You still have to prepare for every pitcher on that roster. You got to prepare for the starter. You got to prepare for all of the relievers and the closer. That's preparation. You know, pitcher's case, it doesn't impact your accuracy, right? You still have to have the muscle memory. You still have to be able to throw the ball through the zone. You still got to be able to throw it in the zone and break it outside the zone. You got to be able to hit your corners, your spots. Those things, there's still value to someone outside of looking at them as just steroids. You know, I had my strength and conditioning coach in college. I think Coach Orr said this. It was after one of my teammates he just got suspended for testing positive for steroids. And he said, man, you can take steroids. Like if you're not a good athlete, if you don't make plays, you know, beforehand, if you're not really good, it's not going to really make you a good player if you take steroids. Yeah, you might be faster or stronger, but you're still going to be trash. You're just going to be fast and trash or strong and trash. You're still not going to make plays. And so that's the one thing I would say about Major League Baseball and the Hall of Fame. The other thing I want to bring up is, you know, you got former pitchers that are in the Hall of Fame now, like Gaylord Perry, who's admitted to throwing spitballs, which is illegal. Or you got the first commissioner in Landis, and the thing about him, man, is that you know he was a key intricate part in keeping the Kennesaw Land is his name. I'm sorry. He was a key part in keeping the African Americans out of the major leagues. So, but yet he's in the Hall of Fame, and yet you are on your high horse, and you don't want to allow these guys during the steroid era, especially the ones that were Hall of Fames beforehand. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, we know that they wouldn't have made the Hall of Fame without the steroids and jacking home runs. We get all that. But for guys like a Barry Bonds, man, come on, man. This guy was already one of the greatest baseball players of all time before them. And yet, you're still holding on to a moral clause that you have. The other thing, too, is there's been a lot of talk about these baseballs going back to 2015 as the baseballs being juiced. One of the main guys that's been complaining about these baseballs is Justin Verlander. Justin Verlander's been saying for a few years, man, that these baseballs are juiced. When I say juiced, so in 2000, in the steroid era, that was the highest amount of total home runs that were hit up into the year 2017. So in 2000, the total amount of home runs that was hit was 5,693. In 2016, there was 5,610 dingers. But when people started to notice an increase in the home runs and a change in the ball was right after All-Star break in 2015. Now in 2017, when they broke the record, it was 6,105 home runs that were hit. Now it dropped a little bit in 2018, but then in 2019, they skyrocketed again to 6,776 home runs was hit, man. Like that's absolutely insane. So, like from a perspective of a fan, baseball fan, the way it looks is like they found a way to circumvent in terms of cheating, rather than the players cheating individually. Well, the baseball is a cheat, and so we'll increase the home run rate. So what are you going to do if it's proven that these balls were juiced? Are you going to not allow baseball players who played during that time frame from 2015 to 20 to whenever they stop using that baseball to get into the Hall of Fame? And the reason why I say proven is because ESPN Sports Science had USC, University of Southern California, and Kent State to do a study on the ball. So they cut it in half. They ran a CT scan to try to determine if there was changes in it. So they took 4 balls from 2014 to 2015, 3 balls from 2015 to 2016, and they took 1 ball, I think was from the 2019 season. They cut them in half. They tested them. They like I said, they ran a CT scan. What they found was the newer balls, like 2015, 2016, when the home run started to spike, and including 2019, there was about a 40% difference in density. So they were less dense than the older balls. They were lighter overall. They're a little bit lighter. They're more bouncy, and then they're more air resistance. So all of that stuff adds up to the ball traveling further. I believe that they found that, on average, man, that can lead to about a 3-foot difference in distance. So you have all of that contributing to an increase in home runs. Now, obviously, baseball is different now, right? You don't see as many teams playing small ball, like bunting to get on base or bunting to move the runners over or, hitting in the gaps, right? You don't see as much as that. A lot of times these teams are going all or nothing. They're swinging for the fences. So you see the strikeouts numbers increase. You don't see people, they're not a concern as much hitting for average. They're more concerned with the home runs, which plays into analytics, right? But you can understand why, because the rate, the percentage, or your chance of hitting a home run are that much more increased, especially even if you miss it. You slightly miss it off of that sweet spot of the bat, you can still go yard. And so, that's my thing is that's why I say that baseball is hypocritical, man. And, for me, I think it's a joke for the Baseball Hall of Fame not to vote anyone in. The last time they did that was in 2013, and I think it's disrespectful to, heck, even to all of the guys that weren't juicing that you didn't even vote on. So that's kind of my take on the Baseball Hall of Fame, man. And hopefully there'll be some changes, But I don't know, man. You got some of these guys that are voting, that they still hold on to this moral clause. But in order to tell the whole story of baseball, you got to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there is ugly history. There is ugly history. There's good history. You got to tell it all to tell the truth. And that's all it is. You go into, the Baseball Hall of Fame, man, it's a museum. And you can't omit the bad parts because that's part of your history, And that's just my take on it, man. And so, I don't want to stay on that any longer. I kind of want to switch sports. I done talked about football and baseball. Now I want to get into the NBA a little bit, man. I've been watching some games, and it's a few topics I want to touch on, man. The first one is about the Denver